All right, I'm back. Okay, so I spray the workable fixative all over the surface, and it's dried up. Only takes maybe a few minutes to dry, and then I test it. So what I do is I take my hands and I just kind of run across the surface here just to see how much pigment is coming up. And you can see there's just a little bit, but it's mostly covered. And so that amount of pigment coming up is actually okay. Anything more, I'd have to probably do another round of the fixative, but I think that's decent. That's good enough. So, and also the surface now has more of a gritty feel to it. It feels a little bit more sandpapery. So there's more texture on the paper. It's going to be more friction on the paper. That allowed me to stack the oil pastels up easier on a more sanded surface. Okay. All right. So let's get started with oil pastels. So here are my oil pastels. Let's start picking up colors. I know I'm going to use that blue, and I know I'm going to use this lavender. I'm going to get that out. Those are definite no's, yes. Probably might even use a little bit of that blue. And then my grays, super important. Let's get all my grays out. Kind of arrange those a little bit. Maybe even that ash. This is an ash gray, although I call it more of a lemon color. But it's ash. No green. Maybe some of these browns. And I'm just kind of picking some of these colors out that I'm pretty sure I'm going to use. I'm definitely going to use that Prussian blue along with a brown. Couple browns. So they'll be good for darks. Definitely a pale yellow. And some of these pinks I'm probably going to use there at some point. I'm just not really sure where. But let's go ahead and bring out maybe a couple of them. All right, no white, no black. Not going to go there yet. Let's just start with that. I think that might be a good start, at least get us going. And we can see what else we need as we get through the scene. Actually, I do want to pick out. Now let's just do that later. Okay, so let's just start. We'll start with the sky blue. We'll just start up right here in the sky. So what I do is I just take the oil pastel and I just go right over and just put that down. This is a Mungio stick. The name of the company, I think it's pronounced Mungio. Maybe it's Mungio. It's Mungyo, and I believe it's a company that's based somewhere in Southeast Asia, maybe Korea, South Korea, or something like that, somewhere over there. I like the Mungio brand just because it has a really good variety of colors, especially for landscapes or nature. They're grays, they're browns, they're blues. They just have a lot to offer, a lot of sticks. And these are pretty good quality. They're not as soft as the Neo Pastels. They're not as soft as the Senneliers. So it's a good, but it's a good brand. It's better than the Krylon Specialist and the Expressionist, in my opinion, which I have. I have those right here. These are all Krylon. But I really like the Mungios. They've just always worked well for me. I'm very familiar with their colors. So I just got a lot of experience with them. Mungio makes a couple different kinds of oil pastels. The ones I'm using are called Mungio Gallery Soft Oil Pastel, which is kind of their artist grade, quote unquote, their artist grade version. They do make a harder oil pastel, harder in consistency, so less pigment, more wax, makes it harder. They do make it, it's more of a student grade, and I have never used those, but I know if people have. And so just if you're interested in the Mungio brand, just be mindful that they do offer different types of oil pastel, and they're different. And where I got them at is jerrysartarama.com, I think, carries them open stock. I don't think Blick does. I think it's just jerrysartorama.com is where I found them. So online, that's where I get them. And they're just fun to use. It's a good brand. So I'm just taking this blue. They call it ice blue. I've renamed it to sky blue because I use it so much in skies. It's like that perfect sky color for a blue sky. And so I'm just kind of going back and I'm just going over that blue of the nupastel with this. And I'm putting down a fair amount of pressure and kind of coming at it at different angles and different directions just to make sure I get good coverage here. And let's see, we're going to continue over here and just kind of put pieces of that sky here in certain spots. So I'm trying to cut in between these branches here. All right, you just see how that works. You can see how much more vibrant the oil pastel color is compared to the nupastel. Try to get up into the edge here where it meets the tape. I like to tape all four sides. That way I have a nice, even, clean edge on all four sides. All right. So this just gets you going. I'm gonna try to think out loud for you guys so that because it can get pretty quiet here as I'm concentrating or going through this and kind of run out of things to say. It's just me in the studio, right? I'm pretending that you all are with me, but I have to keep the conversation going, otherwise it gets really quiet and I don't want people to be bored. So I'll try to think out loud here as I go through this little painting. So my thoughts now are just try to find the sky holes and just kind of put that sky color in. That's kind of what I'm just worried about at this moment. And it's just kind of random, like I leave some of these sticks here showing through, some of the branches here showing through, but you just kind of come in and hit that certain parts with the sky. Let's look at my reference picture here real quick and just make sure. Here you can see, now they only put a little bit of sky here. You see I'm putting in a lot more than what the picture indicates. So, you can make that however you want to make it. But the trick is here to make sure you leave some branches here coming through it. Okay. All right. I want to get good coverage, so I'm going to kind of go over parts of it again here to really make sure I get that nice blue. Nice blue in there. And it's nice. I can feel the friction of the paper. I can feel it grab the oil pastel. So the paper is doing the job. It's pulling that pigment off and depositing it there on the surface. All right. Okay, there's that sky. Now we're going to come back here. Let's try this gray. Let's put this up here. This is just a light, it's your normal light gray, very light gray. And I'm going to come in here to this part of the sky and kind of put this gray in here. Now this gray does lean blue, which is good. So it's a cooler blue or a cooler gray. It's not a warm gray. There's different kinds of grays, and they do different things for me. So I like different grays. This more leans kind of blue to the blue side. But I have different grays. I have warm grays and neutral grays, and so I find that it helps to have different values within your gray set. And again, I'm concentrating on just hitting the areas that are between the trees, between the branches. I'm just coming in and putting a mark there and making sure that I cover that part of the paper. All right, now I might cover a lot of this gray with just more stuff as I get through this painting, but for right now, I'm not really thinking about that. I'm more thinking just cover the paper and just focus on this one aspect of it. This will be a distant tree, so I'm going to kind of come up into the blue here with this gray. And we'll just pretend that this gray is acting like a low layer of clouds, you know. It's kind of a lower layer. And I'm just going to kind of go over some of this blue with that. And I apologize for my sniffling. It's really cold in my studio. It doesn't have very good installation, and so in the wintertime it gets cold. I can get down into the, it seems like it gets down into the 40s. And so when I come in here in the morning, it's just super cold in the wintertime. There we go. And so sometimes my nose gets a little runny. It's either that or I deal with allergies, which I think that might be also a part of it. All right, so we're going to come in, continue down. I'm going to use, now I might use this gray also for the indication of snow. So I'm going to have to figure out how to differentiate the snow between this background sky, and that'll be, not sure yet how I'm going to do that. Again, I'm trying to think out loud here so you guys understand that a lot of this stuff, I'm kind of, it's kind of a educated guess, if you will. You know what I mean? Like I know what I want it to look like in my mind. I can see it in my mind. It's just kind of figuring out which sticks, which colors are going to get me there. And that's always a fun part. It kind of, you just kind of have to guess, and you make mistakes, and sometimes you choose the wrong ones, and that's just all part of it. But right now I'm kind of thinking, okay, I'm using this gray in this back. What am I going to do when I want to put snow on these branches? Am I going to use the same gray? And is that going to separate enough for me? And so I'm kind of thinking about that now. And I'm not sure if this will work, but well, that's all part of it, you know. I think there's a lot of myth going on about how art is made and how paintings are come together, and, you know, and it's a process, and like everything else, you know, you're going to make mistakes sometimes. All right, so let's stop with this gray for a second and look at that for a good. And I think that's pretty good. Let's go with a darker gray. This is a little bit darker, quite a bit darker actually. See it there between these two. And I'm going to kind of reinforce with this. Some of these branches are starting to kind of disappear. I'm just going to come in and bring them into the scene a little bit better. And I'm just going to make sure that they're different and that they're not all the same looking. So they need to just be varied up a little. Try to keep my camera on the my work here. All right. So you just kind of draw in some branches. And if you roll that oil pastel stick like that, if you kind of roll it, you can make the branch look a little bit more natural. So it's not so stiff, and that there's some turns and twists into it, and it looks just a little bit more like a natural looking branch or a tree or something. You know, crisscrossing lines, things like that. Okay. And we'll go ahead and continue these branches into this part. Now I'm coming down into this scene here where it's getting darker and I'm still using this gray, probably going to have to switch this up to a darker color now because it's starting to get lost here. You see that? You can't really see it here. You can see it well up here against the blue, but coming down here where there's already dark, this gets lost. So we're going to come back on this side now, and we're just going to kind of reinforce some of these lines that you see back in here, indication of branches that are kind of back in the scene. So I'm just moving around. You see how I drag it, and then I kind of drag it, and then you just kind of twist or turn it. And it helps you get a more interesting branch. I think it looks a little bit more natural that way. You know, they're all kind of going in a little different directions. Maybe one comes off like that. I think it'll be interesting when these all, you know, they have snow on it. It'll be kind of a cool looking scene. We'll bring this gray down into this tree. Now, I mean, I'm going to go on top of this gray again with some other color here, but it seems to be working for right now. My process is kind of a constant adjustment of values, I guess, is a good way of how I do it. So I just kind of start with a color and I put that in, and then I'll bring in a darker color and put that in, and I'll adjust if there needs to be adjustments. And so throughout the process, it's just a constant evaluation of those values, you know. Kind of step back, take a look at it, you know, make your decision and go back in and just do that. And, you know that you're going to make mistakes, and that's just normal. It's just part of the process. It's nothing, no one's perfect. Right? Everyone, even artists, have been doing this their whole lives. It's just part of the deal, right? There's not this fantasy that everything is going to be perfect, or everything's going to be exactly like we want it. It's just not the case. So these branches are gnarly, they're going everywhere. You make little ones, fat ones, different size ones. You know, add some ones in there. Different directions. Okay. All right, that's pretty good. I think I could probably put some more, maybe indication of just some distant ones back in here. Okay, now I'm kind of just making this scene up. I mean, the picture has kind of gotten me a general idea, but how these branches really are, or what they really are, I don't really know. I'm just kind of thinking, maybe it goes like that, you know. And then just try to piece it together. All right, so I'm going to come over this tree here with this gray, and I'm just going to kind of reinforce this tree here, try to give it a cleaner edge. All right, kind of make it a little bit bigger. And this tree here is going to be the bigger tree. It's closer to us, so it's going to be a bigger tree. Okay. Again, just using this gray. And we'll fade these out. Right now it's going to be gray, but I'm going to have to change this value so that it's not the same gray. Remember, you want those values to change. Super, super important. And maybe a little bit of that shadow from the tree. Okay. This will all change. This is just the initial layers. And just adjusting values is really a constant adjustment of values. Color secondary, values more important. Cool, you see how I indicated those branches? They kind of made this tree a little bit more substantial. All right, so this is good for this gray. Now let's go ahead and reinforce this little fence back here. Now it goes behind the trees. Okay. It's going to go behind that tree, and I'm going to have to make that separation a little bit better there. And then the line continues behind the tree. The line continues. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of just seeing this line go all the way through and try to make sure that it's straight from segment to segment. And then when you get to the very far areas, you know, the distant areas, it's just that line kind of fades out, just kind of fades away. Okay. So if you need a ruler to help you with that, then go ahead and get a ruler or a straight edge to help you. Now these lines, as they get closer to us, they get fatter, they get bigger because it's closer to us, and so it's just bigger. So notice that these lines here are just thicker and they get skinnier as it goes back. It's going to help us with that sense of three-dimensional spatial sense. All right, I'm also going to take this gray. I'm going to go over this little doorway here, this little simple little house here. And I kind of tucked it back into the scene a little bit so it feels a little bit more natural as part of the scene. Didn't want it to stick out too much. This will be some sort of planter box or some sort of something that's in front of this house. I think they're like planter boxes or something. That was kind of my idea for it. All right, so I think that's good for this gray. And this gray does lean blue, so it's a kind of a cooler, darker gray, which is good. Good for snow. Let's go and put that down for a sec. Let's bring out that blue. We're going to go now a step darker. So there's that gray. Here's the blue, and you can see, yes, definitely darker there. All right, and now we're going to bring some of these items here that are closer to us. We're going to come over with this blue and just make those a little bit darker. Okay, now of course, watching this on your monitors or your phone or whatever, your iPad or whatever you're watching this on, the colors are going to look a little different than in real life, right? I mean, that's always happens. Anything that you view on a screen, the contrasts are slightly different there. So this actually might look really dark to you. I don't really know. I'll watch it later and just see how it looks, but this is really just that blue. And I'm just kind of going over again the branches here in the front, kind of bring some of these frontal trees here closer to us. So get nice blue here to help me with that. This is another Mungio stick. And I think it's called Prussian. It's also, there's also another one called Sapphire, which is very close to the Prussian. Okay, so this big tree here, I need to really bring this tree. See all these other branches that are around? I really need to bring this one though. This one has to come forward. So I'm gonna kind of really get that blue down into this tree here and all of its branches that come out of it. I'm going to go over again with the brown. I'm going to make this one even darker, but first we got to get that blue down. There's a couple of gnarly big branches up at the top. There we go. Let's bring in that, make it a little thicker there. Another branch that kind of comes down like that. Maybe it comes down across. Kind of felt I needed a dark to come in front of that tree to help get that separation there. See that? You see how that dark, and it's like an illusion. It just kind of, just a value change there, how that works. All right, so I don't want to bring the blue, I don't want to bring this to here yet, not yet. Now when I make this darker, then I might. We'll just see how it looks right now without it. All right, so it's pretty good for that tree. It's pretty substantial now. It definitely is coming forward. Same with this one, and then these now are nice sinking back. Let's go ahead and take the blue up in here again. We're going to go over the gray that we just put down, and we're going to make these nice and dark. Because remember, down in here, the gray was kind of disappearing. Now that when I bring over this blue, now you see the separation there. Okay. And something like that. Remember the little sticks that are sticking up out of the snow? We'll put some of those in there. And we'll reinforce this part here. And then we have a roof right there. The edge of the roof, and over here. Now these lines here, you can see how they come together a little bit as the house, recedes away from us here. And so trying to get that sense of spatial distance. All right. So these lines here that help the eye kind of make that work for you. So inside of the door jamb there, it's going to be darker on that edge. Right, and then maybe even an indication there. Okay, and then there we go, darker here. Okay, this just helps me with that house. I need to bring it into the scene here. All right, now this fence post also is dark, and we need to make it as same as these trees. So I'm going to go over the dark brown here with this blue. Just trace right over that. this side. Try to find a flat edge here to work with. So I think this will do good, right? Like that. Yeah, that's good. And then again with the rails. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. There we go. There we go. There we go. That's working out. Now I'm not going to take this blue, except I might put it right here. I don't want to take the blue on the fence, not the whole fence, but maybe as it's closer to us here, that might actually work out okay. I don't want to do that to here or here or here. Okay. A little bit of dark right there. So I'm not looking at my reference picture. You see, all dark. I'm just kind of guessing what it might look like. It's guesswork. I know what not to do, and it's really about values. It's really the important piece. I keep emphasizing values, but it's really the most important thing, more so than color. Composition and values, I think, is the most important elements. Bring that dark branches into it. All right, maybe this one right here, this big one at the top should be really dark because it's big branch. Okay, maybe this one here. So some of these are going to remain the gray. Some of them are going to be darker, and you just kind of have to figure out which ones those are going to be. But I'm creating separation just within the branches itself. Okay. Again, we're thinking of this scene as a three-dimensional space. And we're recreating a three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface. And the only really way to get that is you use perspective lines like we have, three-dimensional space or objects, and then values. And that's how you get that. That's how you get that that illusion, I guess. All right, so we're gonna make these a little darker here. Just a little bit. And there we go. So some of those are going to remain gray, some are blue. You need a variety of that just to give it some spatial visual distance, so it's not such a flat image. We have space. Okay. Let's see. Now, let's stop with that for a while. Let's go with these lavenders and kind of see what the lavenders are going to look like down in here in this part of the snow. So you can see I got a little sliver left. I'm going to try to use as much of this little piece as I can. And I'm just going to cover that and try to angle the light. Angle it, not straight across, but I kind of want to angle it a little. Okay. And kind of work on this back tree here to kind of bring it out, but it's nice lavender color, so it's going to sit back there as compared to these other trees next to it. You can see how these now look farther away. And I'm going to go ahead and want to do that over here. As I see, there might be a little tree back in there. Okay. And I'm going to kind of take some of this lavender and kind of fill in some of this negative space back in here. Kind of a cooler lavender, going to use that. All right, so we're kind of coming over the gray. Remember that gray that I put back in here? I'm going to take that lavender, the same lavender I put down in here. We're going to kind of just very gently get back into the back part of the painting. So I'm kind of working in between all the little branches and the trees, and just kind of hitting the spaces in between, you know, some distant branches, foliage, etc. And we're going to use this lavender here. I use lavender a lot, and not just snow paintings, but just in general. I find it to be almost the perfect shaded color. It needs some help with some gray sometimes on top of it, so it's not so strong, because this color can really be vibrant actually. But you can see I got a little sliver left, and I use the lavender quite a bit, even if I'm not doing a snowy scene. All right, it's a nice contrast here between warm, cool, warm, cool, warm, cool, warm, cool. Those are very visually attractive to us. Kind of helps us with that wow factor, you know, when you look at a painting, and you're looking at the colors, and those complementary colors there and the contrast next to each other really help with that. All right, let's bring it in. Now I'm noticing when I put in the oil pastel, it's starting to crumb up on me. It's starting to like kind of get a little flaky here. And that's just because the surface is so dry from the fixative that the first couple passes do that. They kind of get crumbly and almost flaky. And you just kind of rub it and kind of try to push that back into the paper. But the more layers you add, it'll stack up. The colors will start stacking up. But the first few passes here gets a little crumbly like that. And that's because of the fixative I put on it earlier, which does that. It gets the surface really dry. And then these are the moon geos again. All right, so I'm going to try to bring some of this lavender up the tree. Remember, this is going to be, there's snow that's kind of climbing up the base of these trees. Okay. And so lavender is a nice color to use for snow that's in shade, which this part will be in shade. So I'm just going to kind of get that in there. I'm probably going to get through most of this little shard here, this little piece. Just because I can see it, it's really flaking up here in the front here. And again, that's normal. I've used that fixative, so the surface is just really dry. It's going to take a lot of layers to start stacking up on me. All right, now let's go to this house here, and we'll bring in some of that lavender to this side of the house. Not this side, not where the light is, but on the shaded side. Okay, and even on the roof. So we've got to figure out how we're going to put snow on that roof. So we'll use a little lavender for that. Okay. All right, I think we're good on the lavender. Let's do a little bit on the fence. Okay. Now I think I'm going to bring some oil to the surface because it's really dry, it's really flaky. And I think I just need a little bit more oil on the surface to help with that. So I'm going to finish out with this lavender. So maybe some distant branches back in here from some trees. You can see that lavender is good for that distant stuff. So there's a lot of uses for it. Distant trees, distant hills, snow that's in shade, shaded parts, sky reflection. Lavender is a good color, very versatile, comes in handy in a lot of different areas there. All right, nice blue going on there. All right, now let's take some of the stuff starting to flake off down here. All right, let's take these off. And I'm going to take some oil. So this is oil, and this is what it looks like when it's, this is a newer stick, so you can see how much oil I use. I've gone through a big stick, and that's what's left of it. So I'm going to try to use the rest of this. But before I do that, I'm going to clean it up a little bit because it's got some residue from a previous session here. So I'm going to try to get a lot of this pigment off of it. Because all this is just oil. It's just oil and wax. There's no color in it. It's just extra oil. And it's basically medium for oil pastel. It's basically how I look at it. But I want to make sure that it's clean and that it's nice and cleaned up before I use it. So there it is, clean. And I'm just going to take it and I'm going to rub it on the surface here, right where it's getting flaky and dry. It just needs more oil. And so if you take this blender stick and you do that, you can get more oil on the surface. The oil also helps with blending. It's going to help with me blending. And I use it quite a bit for oil pastels. Now, you could also use solvents or mineral spirits, terp. You can use that with oil pastels because it's an oil-based product, and the solvents will work to spread things out, and a lot of people do it that way, and it's a great method. It works really well. You just have to use a brush. You can even use your fingers. So if you don't want to use a blender stick, a solvent would work for you. Even oil would work, like I don't know, like a mineral oil, maybe a baby oil. I've heard baby oil, mineral oils. But this is basically oil in stick form, and it's made by Sennelier, and it works great for oil pastels, and it works really good for other brands, more so specifically other brands than the Sennelier brand. And you can see I'm kind of going to put it back in this area because this is where I'm going to do a little blending. And I put the oil down where I'm going to do some blending. It just helps me with blending. It's a lot easier to blend with. I used to use solvents all the time. I just got tired of using a brush with oil pastels, so I found the Sennelier blender stick works really good for blending, and I don't have to use a liquid. All right, so now the surface here where I rub that oil, it's got that nice sticky, waxy feel. So let's take a stump. Here's my stumps. This one's already got lavender on it, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. And I'm just going to see what that's like now to blend. And it's just really nice and easy. The pigment moves now. And I got enough stacked up on there where I can really manipulate that blue. Okay, so I'm going to spend some time here and I'm going to blend. Now I'm putting some pressure on the surface, and I do like a circular, and then I come back and try to do horizontal, and I'm just kind of getting the colors that I've stacked up, I'm getting them to mix by doing this, and then I finish off flat because I'm trying to work in those shadows. So I'm just going to kind of do that here. So kind of a circular just to get the colors mixing with each other, and then kind of follow the tree. So the tree goes up, I'm going to kind of try to follow that with the stump here. kind of just push into the paper. Okay, push into the paper. There's a fair amount of pressure going in here. I'm just pushing into it. All right, so these stumps really handy to have. It saves your fingers. Because if I didn't have these, I would have to use my fingers, and it's just not as effective to do the blending part. So these stumps really come in handy. Excellent tool to have. You can find them in the drawing section of your art store. That's where I get them at. That's where I see them. They come in these packs here, these paper stumps. So these come in packs. They have different sizes. They have these nice fat ones, which are really nice to hold on to. And then they have the smaller, skinnier ones, which you can do for detail blending. But I get them at my art store. I've also seen them on Amazon. Of course, everything is on Amazon. So you can find them there. I try to get stuff local rather than always trying to rely on Amazon for everything. All right, so down in this corner, I am going to use my thumb, and I'm just kind of smear that across. So you see I'm doing some heavy blending here. The rest of it's not blended, so you can see there's quite a bit different look here between this and this. All right, so just blend it. This is a workout, like especially the pressure I'm putting into it. I can feel in my shoulder sometimes. I can feel that in my shoulder. So that's why I think a lot of people use the solvents, because of it makes it easier to blend or spread the color out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and continue along with this blending. Remember, I'm trying to pretend that the snow is kind of drifted up on these trees a little bit. You know, I'm kind of going for that really heavy, snowy look. Hopefully we can get there, but I'm trying to make that indication there using that lavender. Okay, and I think I feel it. I need a little bit more oil right in here. I can kind of feel there's a little bit more friction than I want. Again, it's a feel thing with this blender stick, and it's taking me a few paintings or drawings to kind of get used to how much to use and when to use it. So because you can't put too much, and then you have problems getting layers. So there's always like I'll put it down and then I'll kind of feel it with my finger here just to see if I had that's enough, because I don't want to put too much. All right, keep going. And we're going to really do more of the blending in the background here to really get those values to sit back and dole out and sit in the back for me. All right, we'll pretend that's some distant trees there in the background, kind of coming out. Now, I could have done the back part of the painting first, and I'd done all this and then added the trees on top, and I've done that method as well, and it works fine. But I feel like this also works where I'm kind of working in between the branches. So either way will work here. You can layer it, or you can kind of work in between the branches. But I just really want to smooth out that back part so that the texture of it doesn't come through, because texture will come through. Texture will make things come forward, and smoother will help things sit back. I'm always thinking of things in a three-dimensional space. and trying to think of it as though I'm actually standing here and I have these branches coming over me. So smooth that out. You kind of see how the road just kind of ends. We're going to try to figure out how to continue that road on by using light. So we'll get to that point here in a minute. Just something I'm thinking about out loud. As I was working in this area, I noticed the road just kind of stops, and I kind of want it to continue through the scene. Maybe it's going to curve one way. Maybe it's going to curve this way or something. But I want it to continue through. All right, so let's continue to blend in over here between all this stuff here. And I keep looking down at my phone. I'm using my iPhone to do the filming process here. I got a iPhone here that I'm using that. And I have this chest mount that I attach the phone to, so it allows me to have my hands free. Gives you guys a nice up close view, because now you can actually see me touching the surface with the medium and my fingers by using this kind of filming method. If I had a camera off to the side, you would miss those details. And I think with oil pastels and when you're doing a drawing medium, I think it really helps to see it hit the paper. You got to find where that point hits the paper. And for you guys to see it, I think it's helpful. That's why I like this little chest mount, because I like that first person aspect of it. Okay, so really just kind of fading that lavender back. I might come in with my finger and kind of spread that up. I don't want any sharp lines back there. I don't want any texture back there. So that's what I'm kind of looking for. I'm just kind of going through with my eye, and if I see any kind of sharper line or if I see broken color texture, I will smooth it out, because I need that to stay smooth and leave the texture up front. Okay. So you see I'm using now my thumb here to just help get that soft blend going. I find that the thumb here, the stump's good for blending, but sometimes you kind of need a soft look. You need to soften edges, and you can do that with the stump. You can kind of go over the edges here and you can kind of fade them out with that. But you can also just take your thumb and you can do the same thing. And I think the thumb works better sometimes just to get that look. So use your fingers and stumps and get different looks. I'm going to smooth that out here. Okay. You can see the difference in the lavenders. It's the same color. This color and this color is the same. The difference is here is I have a gray underneath it, a lighter gray, and I'm also blending. All right. And so I'm blending that gray and that lavender together. Here is mostly lavender, and the blending is going more directional. The color's deeper there. Okay. All right, so here we have the house, and I'm going to kind of bring my thumb down. We're going to go with the direction of the house, so more of a vertical marks. Blend that part. Okay. Get those lines in. All right. Down in the snow. Try to get that blended more. Oop, getting a little flaky there. Take some oil, press it down in there, and I'll come back and then there's no flakiness. So when it's flaking up, it's telling me it's not enough oil. Again, you got to if you're thinking about using that blender stick, practice with it. Get an idea of how it works, because you can put too much and then it can be really difficult to then add more layers if you put too much of that oil down. I've learned that the hard way and had to use some fixative when I didn't want to get some more layers. Okay. Not going to go over the fence. I want to keep that different, but down in here, definitely want to blend that. So this lavender, this combination of this lavender and this pale yellow here is going to be a nice color combination when they sit next to each other like that. I saw a line here. There's like a line that I could see. I didn't really like it, so I'm trying to blend it out. I'm trying to kind of do a circular to try to get that line to go away. I don't want sharp lines back in that part. Now up in front here, I do like the sharp lines. Back in here in the middle part and the back part, I don't want any sharp lines. So I'm just kind of finding those and I'm just kind of rubbing those out. And we'll even go over some of these branches here and kind of smear some of these ones. So some of them are going to be a little bit blurry and some will be sharp. And all I'm doing is I'm just taking the tip of that stump and I'm just going over it to kind of blur it up a little, kind of switch the value a little, and then just kind of seeing what that looks like. Again, I'm doing it for three-dimensional appeal, three-dimensional space and feel. Right here, I want it a little bit more blurry. Also, I tend to be on the edges. I tend to be a little bit more blurred on the edges here. And then a little bit sharper as I come into the bulk of the scene. So you kind of want really sharpness kind of right in the kind of the front lower part of this scene particularly. And then towards the edges, I kind of want a little bit more of a faded out, less sharp lines. And that kind of focuses the brain, it kind of focuses the eye a little bit. So you can see on my edges here, at the edge, how that's going to look. I think it's going to, when it's all done and I got all the light in here, I think it's going to look pretty decent. You know, this is a process. It's just this continual process as we go through it. So it takes a lot of changes. which is something so enjoyable because it's so unpredictable. You know, it's like, yeah, I have the image in my head, I have the idea from the reference picture, I now have it in my head, and so trying to see it and then translate that to the paper is just so much fun, especially when you can pull it off and it looks real. You know, it looks like, oh yeah, it looks exactly like I wanted it to. All right, so we're gonna change that. We're actually gonna sharpen this branch, but I just wanted to kind of spread out that color a little bit. We're gonna come back in here with a really dark brown, and we're gonna really sharpen some of those branches up. And when we put the snow on it, it'll really pop out. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue, and I'm gonna continue to fade out these distant little gray ones here. Kind of try to blur it up a little. Try to mix some of that sky in the sky blue color and kind of overlap some of those branches with it to kind of help smear it out, kind of create that visual illusion of distance. Excuse me. So I like my videos unedited. I like them to be as real and as raw as possible. When I